الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته Inshallah continue our series of talks in the life of Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anhu. Today is the 8th talk, and last week we talked about in general about the way Uthman bin Affan was ruling. So this was basically what the ruling system in the time of Uthman, which is in general, of course, it's a continuation of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and then Abu Bakr and Umar. But many changes you see are because of expansion of the land that was under his rule. And hence you see that similar kind of impact you will see on the financial system as well, or the economic system, the time of Affan. But when I'm saying changes does not mean that he was coming up with something outside of Islam or something. It's more of there are more needs that you have that need to be fulfilled. Hence, you have to come up with rules and regulations which are extracted from, again, the same sources of the Quran and Sunnah, or the sources of the Sharia, which is Quran, Sunnah, Ijma' and Qiyas. So, last week we talked about the ruling system, including all the letters and stuff letters that he sent out to whether they were the walis or the leaders, including the leaders of the army and agents in the different wilayas. Wilaya refers to the provinces of states in Islam. So you can think of, there's some countries still called provinces within the countries, or states, if you want to call it within a state, but conceptually it's just a bigger region is under a ruler who is under the Khalifa or the Uthman institution. Okay, today we'll talk about more about the financial institutions and how in the time of Uthman bin Affan, financial institutions were taken care of while the economic system was implemented. I want to make a quick note about when we talk about economic system, let's have an understanding of that there's a difference between economic system and economic science. A lot of times people mix up these things and think of it as if when they are talking about economic science, they're thinking they're talking about economic system, but it's not. It's more of a science. When I'm saying that, for example, so economic system is more about how the funds come into the state and how the funds are distributed within the state or to run the state. So that this is the main crux of it, and in Islam, Islam teaches us how you gather the wealth, whether on an individual scale or on a state scale level, and same way how to spend it, or the expenditure of individuals or the state. All of them have to be according to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded. So we'll look into that inshallah today, how in the time of Uthman financial institutions were run. Please, if you have any questions, I think we will just take questions at the end, but do write it down, it will be helpful inshallah. So now, when it comes to financial policy that was announced by Uthman bin Affan, so as we talked about, the Kharaj collectors were sent to different places. So Kharaj is a tax that in Islam that the state can collect from the farming land, that has the land that is opened by force, and that is on all the people. That a land which is a Kharaji land, which is referred as. Once it's a Kharaj land, it is always a Kharaj land. Okay. And now the land which are opened by just the Islam, there was no force was used. So those lands are called the Ushri land. The Ushri is taking the Kharaj and not taking the tax. Ushri is a tax which is on the produce. Kharaj is on the land, and Ushri is on the produce, what the land produces, and if that production from the land is above the nisab. So nowadays what people are thinking and talking about all the time about zakat, right? The Ramadan. Even though zakat can be done any time in the year, as long as the year has passed on the wealth that you're paying zakat. Okay? Just for you guys, I know that millionaires are sitting here and they have a lot of money. You guys should be paying zakat. But even you maybe don't need to pay them. But I bet most of you probably have enough. So that goes by, when you look at the money that you have saved up the whole year, if that wealth is equivalent of 200 dirham, which is silver coins, each coin is 2.975 grams. So it comes out to be 595 grams of silver. And you can put 595 grams of silver and find out what's the price of that. I think it comes out to be somewhere $1,700. So if you have saved up that kind of money, always have that money, and we do have to pay the zakat. Okay? So if you don't, then alhamdulillah, you're good to go. Even then. But either way, you say alhamdulillah. And never ever look at it from the angle of, oh man, I have to pay 2.5%. This is Allah's living in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Second, it is the right of the people that are going back to it. Allah is the one who provides us. And when we are looking at that 2.5%, we look at it as, that's not even our wealth. It is a share Allah has designated for certain people, and it should go, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala multiplies whatever we spend in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, regardless. Yeah? So, and it's, of course, it purifies a lot as we know about zakat. Okay, so in general, Uthman was applying the financial policies of Islam, and he was making sure that there's a balance between the collection, meaning the funds that come in into the treasury, and how it is spent. Okay, and making sure that Baytul Mal or the treasury is used for the Muslims, and also whatever comes in from Ahlul Dhimma, the one who are non-Muslims within the state, they are protected by Islam. They can practice their religion. This is how Islam is the one that actually teaches us how to coexist. Yeah. So now, Islam, in Islam, actually, you give protection, and there are incidents you find in the history of Islam when Muslims had to pull their armies out of the region, for example, that was under the control that happened in Umar. And so Umar, he returned the jizya money that he was collecting from Ahlul Dhimma. So it's a separate subject, but the point is the wealth from the treasury is also used on Ahlul Dhimma as well. Okay? Ahlul Dhimma, because they are the protection, they are part of their citizens, as the Muslims are citizens, with, of course, they are different in the sense of they have decided to follow a different religion. Okay, and of course, avoiding financial corruption, which leads prosperity for the entire ummah. Avoiding financial corruption. I think we are all very well aware of how much really financial corruption happens nowadays, right? People intentionally would go and open up companies, they would start taking loans from the banks, and then they go ahead and then file for bankruptcy, and millions and millions of dollars, they just basically stolen by those people who are taking those loans under the guise of loans were taken by corporations. And this is a separate subject. I'm not giving a simple idea. In a corporation, in reality, there is no human owner. It's the capital that is owned. And hence, there is no really, you cannot really go after the people who are engaged in so-called legal frauds to basically steal the wealth. Yeah? But in Islam, when you have the companies that you open up, that human bodies are there. They are part owners of those companies, and hence, and also they are, because of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are fearful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that they are accountable in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Islam provides a comprehensive economic system, how to run it. Don't think economic system in Islam means just zakah or I don't do like usury or riba. That's not the only thing. It provides every detail of the economic system, how you make the contracts, and validity of the contract, what is a valid contract, what is an invalid contract, or what is a corrupted or sahih or batil and what's the word, fasid contract. Yeah. So there's a lot of detail. So I would highly recommend that if you guys are in these kind of fields, especially dealing with it, and even if you're not, we should be aware of it. I remember last week one of the brothers was asking the question regarding the financial systems and all that. There's a lot of information available in the fiqh books and as well as the other books are written, which goes in detail in respect to the economic system and stuff. Okay, and when he was applying this financial institution, of course, he was following what Abu Bakr has done there already, and Umar Khattab radiallahu anhu. Now, what happened at the time of Uthman is because the land expanded a lot, the population was great, so wealth that was coming into the state was way more than was in the time of Umar Khattab radiallahu anhu, which I'll show you some of the figures. Now, because of that, he needed to deal with the wealth in a manner that he has process and procedures in place to take care of the wealth in a proper manner. Now, besides that, so he supervised the way the zakat was collected and brought into Bayt al-Mal and how it was distributed. Remember that zakat is only for 8 categories which are mentioned in the Quran. Okay? It cannot be given to anybody but those 8 categories. And for the Muslims. Doesn't mean that Muslims do not take it as people who are not Muslim. It's just that this wealth, zakat, cannot be used on that. Similarly, even this kind of a wealth cannot be used on any other category than those 8, and those people can be Muslim. So it has to be going to because Allah has defined those 8 categories in Surah Tawbah, verse number 60. Now, unfortunately nowadays probably you have heard that there's some fatwa has been passed around that you can use this wealth for, they use the terminology which is mentioned in one of the qulub, which is inclining the hearts, while when we look at that, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he used that for, first of all, for the people who were Muslims, who just entered full Islam, but they were leaders of different tribes, and Islam was not that strong yet. So it was given to Muslims still. But the fatwa was passed not too long ago, a month or so, talks about that you can use that money given to non-Muslims who are running for political adventures, call it. So you can make the laws in favor of the Muslims. So now not only you have broken the law in regards to zakah, which is to be given to the Muslims, only for those 8 categories. On top of it, you're using that wealth for something that also displeases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because then you are giving the wealth of the Muslims to go and do that only belongs to Allah, making the laws. Laws belongs to Allah, He's the one who's the Shara, He's the one who's the Hakim, and we take the laws from Him, not the man should be the one who is given to this kind of authority. So zakat was taken in the time of Uthman bin Affan and it was distributed to the right owners. Ahlul Kitab paid the jizya. When we were discussing the Umar al-Khattab talk, I don't think I have the numbers here, maybe I do. So in the Umar's time, we talked about that, for example, the people of Asham, they were given the jizya of 1 dinar if they were poor, not too rich. The middle class was paying about 2 dinar, and the elites were paying 4 dinar per year, and only the males. Children and women are not paying. Okay? Now, this is the tax. That's our whole tax they pay. 1 dinar, 2 dinar, or 4 dinar. Okay? 1 dinar is 4.25 grams gold, which comes out to be 1 dinar is 4.25. I'm I'm not sure how much, $400, $500, something like that, per year. And if he was working or has worked a bit, whatever, you know when you get the check what happens. So it's a huge amount is already gone. So in Islam, this is what they were paying, and that was guaranteeing their protection. And they did not have to, what's the word it was used, inscribe for the army or military, right? So they don't go and fight either, but they're protected. Okay. Now, and that's for that. Yemen was paying 1 dinar, Egypt was paying 1 dinar also per year for that male only. And when they were older, those people, even the male, then the state comes in and was taken care of. Okay? So I know this word jizya is thrown at Muslims many times. Oh, you guys take the jizya. Yeah, but do you know that the Muslims who are in the state, they pay more in zakat, more in ushr, more in kharaj than the non-Muslims who are paying? So I'm not trying to compare all those things, but we have to look at the whole thing. Don't bring just one example, one thing, and just throw it at the people and expect them to justify something. Plus, what we're talking about, it is a command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that is to fulfill that. Okay, so even the jizya has been taken, and then it was used for the protection and security of them. And also, when it was the spoils of war that was coming in, 1/5 always, from the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was going to the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Basically, he was a leader also, and then he was spending it on the masakin, fuqara, and running the state affairs as well. Okay. What else I talked about? Now, yeah, I have something, I guess. So, public income from the jizya at the time of Uthman, so it continued on what Umar al-Khattab started. Uthman continued what Uthman was collecting. And of course, it's up to the Khalifa to decide how much of the jizya will be imposed. Now, how much it was taken was, for example, from the Kufa, which was under the Al-Walid Uthman, when he opened Azerbaijan, where he made a peace deal with his people in return for 800 dirhams, 800,000 dirhams. Again, dirham is a silver coin of 2.975 grams of gold or silver, and you can calculate that how many grams or kilograms of silver that comes out to be. So same thing happened in North Africa. It was about, which is Tunisia, about 2.52 million dirham, or dinar actually. This is much bigger. So this is North Africa, Algeria, and all the bigger part of Africa we're discussing here, and 2.52 million dinar. Now this is gold we're talking about. So that's gold was collected from those regions. So that shows that the state has a lot of revenue, and without oppressing the people, the way you find in other isms or systems which are out there, the way they oppress the people. Same thing about Cyprus, 7,000 dinars to be paid to the Muslims at that time. I'm going to skip that one. These are just some numbers. Now, the deal of the people of Najran. Najran is these were the Christians at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They made a deal with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that instead of jizya they would pay amount of zakat. Yeah. So pay attention here, man. I know this morning. Everybody knows this morning. So here they were. They agreed that they would rather pay whatever Muslims pay zakat, they would pay double the zakat. And Rasulullah made the deal. It's the amount of money. It doesn't matter because they do not want to pay as a jizya. It's still a jizya. Then Abu Bakr continued on, and they stayed in the area they were in. And after Umar was appointed Khalifa, Umar expelled them from Najran and Yemen, so they settled down in Najran and Iraq. Okay? The reason was there was some issues were popping up, and Umar was the one who was making sure that there is no fitna or any kind of difficulty comes to the state or plus that they were making. And when Umar died, Uthman bin Affan came, and he wanted to make sure that the people who were Christians from Najran, they are treated well when they are in Iraq. Okay? And he wrote the letter, and in that letter, he said to Walid ibn Uqba, so he was the half brother of Uthman ibn Affan as well. So he wrote to him and said to the bishops, priests, and prominent figures among the people of Najran who are in Iraq came to me and complained to me and showed me the conditions that Umar agreed to with them. Meaning, what Umar agreed on, they were not getting the treatment that they were supposed to be receiving. So when Uthman found out, so right away he wrote the letter, and this is the key thing, right? We should not be expecting, just because, for example, the Sahaba were ruling, or Khulafa Rashidin, so people would not make mistakes under them. And this will always be the case. Whenever you are implementing the rules from Allah, the creator of the heavens and the earth, it's still the ones who are implementing on the earth are the human beings. And human beings can make mistakes. We're not talking about prophets, we're talking about human beings, normal human beings. They can make mistakes. Making a mistake is not an issue. As long as that's not a deliberate mistake, intentional mistake, number one. Second, and the moment you find out what the mistake was, you try to rectify it, you try to fix it. Right? And that's what you see with Uthman ibn Affan. He found out there's a mishandling of the people of Najran. Hence, he sent the letter. He said, I know that they have suffered because of some Muslims, so I have reduced their burden of jizya by 30 suits. And I have done that for the sake of Allah, maybe we go far. So basically, he made sure that the people of Najran are taken care of and they are not mistreated. So that's part of the financial policy, and he reduced the jizya from them. Now, the things that you see here is Uthman ibn Affan made sure that the covenant that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam made, and then after Abu Bakr Umar made, those covenants are fulfilled. Look, always in Islam, it's a very important thing that whenever we make a covenant, whenever we make an agreement, whenever we make a promise with the people, it's of utmost importance that we fulfill those promises. Whether we're talking about on an individual level or even on a state level. Yeah? And that's exactly what Uthman ibn Affan did. And to take care of them, because the mistakes made by Muslims, Uthman reduced the amount of jizya. Now, other income that comes into the state is through Kharaj, for example. So Kharaj, as I mentioned already, Kharaj is the land which is conquered, and now what the part of the land I'm talking about is the land that produces for farmland we're talking about. So let's say somebody named Abdullah, he owns 1,000 acres of land, right? So now, but the land was conquered. So because it was conquered, then there is an estimation be done by the state that how much that Kharaj will be for that land to be paid. Okay? And then that goes to the Baitul Mal and is used for running the affairs of the state. Does not go into the pocket of the Khalifa. Does not go into the pocket of the family of the Khalifa or any of those things. It is for the treasury it goes back to, and it's used back on the people. Okay? And now, that's for the Kharaj. Another thing which is called is Ushur. So Ushur is different than Ushr. Okay? Ushr or Ushri land, when we say, that's which is coming from the 10. So 10% of when somebody produces something, so from farming again. This is all farming we're discussing. From farmland, from the produce, if it exceeds the nisab of the zakat. But this is the zakat of the produce. Okay? That's the 10% that we taken from them. And non-Muslims do not pay the ushr. I'm not going to go through by the way. I come to something called ushr separately. Ushr is some other subject. So don't pay attention here. So ushr is only paid by Muslims. Non-Muslims do not pay zakat, remember that. And this is the zakat on the produce. And they do not pay. Kharaj, Muslims will pay and non-Muslims will pay. Because that's on the land. It's a tax on the land. It's not a zakat. Now, about the ushur is when you you are trading with other countries. You're selling some produce or you're exporting something, and those countries apply so-called nowadays the famous word tariffs, yeah, or some sort of taxes on you. By the way, tariff is from the Arabic word. I wish the one who's using this word left and right should know that it is an Arabic word from the Arab, yeah. Anyways, it is the tariff that was used. So Muslims do not normally apply these taxes if somebody brings in some goods from outside. But if the nation that is applying tariffs or the taxes on you, you do the reciprocity or reciprocal of the same amount that they apply. So if they apply 10%, you apply 10%. Does that make sense? So that's called ushur. So that's another form of funds that's coming in. Again, since I'm talking about economic financial policy in the time of man, or the economic system in the time of man, that requires to understand what? How the wealth comes in and how the wealth is distributed or expenditure. Make sense? Okay. Now, so now we're talking about the allocation of land. The time of man will increase from 9 million. What land was producing increased from 9 million dirham per year in the time of Umar, increased to 50 million dirham. Now, the numbers I had here, the first number that you're seeing, that 50 million dirham is equivalent to about 147,500 kilograms of silver. Now, you're surprised that this number is equivalent to about 228 million plus some change, yeah, dollars, and that number was from about 6-7 months ago. When I was giving this talk in another masjid, I think about 6 months ago I was giving this talk, and the amount was 228 million. When I calculated the numbers yesterday, last night, it came out to be 425 million. Because I'm not sure how much you guys are following the price of silver, how it has exponentially increased, and same thing for the gold as well. Yeah, like for example, as one of the brothers knows, so I go to Costco sometime. So last year in January, I remember very clearly the 10-ounce silver bar they were selling for $309. Okay. And then last December, that went over $1,000, about more than 300%, or more than 3 times, so you want to look at it. That's why, what 6 months ago when I calculated, and now when I'm calculating the price, the whole wealth has changed. See, that shows that, and it's not, we go by gold and silver currency. We don't go by this fiat currency, which is basically phony money, virtual money, fake money, whatever you want to call it. It's just whoever has the power, they can control it, and they can print as much as they want. But if they want to suppress some other nation, they can go and say, oh, your money has been devalued. But their dollar is connected to the petroleum now. So since they broke away, the world broke away from gold standard, now you see the inflation skyrocketed, right? You can have whatever money you have saved up, but if you don't use it, you find after a while, the very same money cannot buy the same amount of goods that you were able to buy, let's say 6 months ago, right? So the whole financial system is quite corrupted, let's put it this way. Islam, the way it presents, it actually provides justice for all and makes sure that the system is not abused by anyone, whether you're powerful or weak. Okay. So the money is also stays stable, because when you talk about gold and silver, they have their intrinsic value, and that does not depreciate or anything the way that the dollar or the rupee or the pound or whatever currency we're talking about. Okay. Now, when it comes to the allocation of the land, most of the hadith are da'if, they're weak. The one they talk about that mostly Uthman was allocating to his own family and stuff like that. Okay? There's some of the names I mentioned here, so I hope that you will not write questions from this to memorize these names. the lands were allocated to. These are the different Sahaba. They include Abdullah bin Mas'ud, Ammar bin Yasir, Khattab bin Arad, Ali bin Hatim, Sa'ad bin Abi Waqqas, Zubayr, Usama, Sa'id bin Zayd, and Jarir bin Abdullah, and so on and so forth. So this is some of the names I mentioned in the books. Now, when it comes to the grazing land, and the reason I'm drawing this picture of like this about the grazing land and all these things I'm mentioning, because these are some of the things were used against Uthman bin Affan in the time of the fitna, in the time when people were building the case to assassinate or remove Uthman first from the position or assassinate him. So they were using these kind of things. Or where did Uthman use the land? Or was he making governors only his family members? Or when it comes to the grazing lands, which is part of Islam that belongs to the public property. Yeah? Like the hadith of Rasulullah that says that the people are partners in three. And I don't remember the order, but the hadith something like this says that al-kala wal-nar wal-nar. Al-nar wal-kala wal-nar. So, al-nar is the fuel or the fire. Okay, it could be oil, it could be gas, it could be hatab, the wood, or coal, whatever. And when it comes to ma is water. So water resources are also owned by public. Individuals cannot own it, corporations cannot own it, people cannot gather together, cannot own these things. So, and same thing goes for the kala. Kala is grazing lands. So open grazing lands that animals can go and graze in. Now, that actually changes the whole economic system drastically if you understand these three things. Imagine that all the oil wells that exist today in Muslim lands, they cannot be owned by a company or a malik or this or that. Rather, it is owned by public. What means that public is, it is governed by the state and the benefit goes to the people. Okay? So it cannot be owned by individuals. Alright? Now, same thing goes for water resources. Same thing goes for the grazing land, open grazing land. So in the time of Uthman, one thing happened was because land increased, the wealth that was coming in increased, that means all the cattle and stuff that were coming in the part of the zakat or the spoils of war, that increased, that required more grazing lands as well for the camels and the cows and the sheep and all those things that were coming in. So hence, in the time of Abu Bakr and Umar, it was not as much. Umar actually increased the land, but in the time of Uthman, he increased further. Okay? And that includes the land which is called the grazing area of Rabda. Rabda is the land, we'll talk later sometime. This is the land where Uthman bin Affan, he sent Abu Dhar, he not sent, he suggested him that because of Sham was giving some problem, with him. Sorry, not Sham, Kufa people. So he asked him to move to Rabda and he accepted it. And he actually lived there alone and he passed away over there. People use this against Uthman as well, that Uthman had some animosity against Abu Dhar by any means. When we talk about that, inshallah, you get an idea, but there wasn't something like that. So he allocated land for grazing in Diyar Bani Alaba, despite their protests, which he answered by saying that land is financial and judicial institution at the time of Uthman, the land of Allah, and it should be allocated for the camels, which belongs to Allah, which is the zakat. And Uthman followed the way of those who came before him, meaning talking about Rasulullah or the Prophet. So he did not invent something new. Now, Abu Bakr and Umar allocated land for grazing without anyone objecting. Nobody objected that the land were allocated. And Uthman took the matter further because there were so many camels coming in, right? So now when he did that, so there was no issues at that time. And then what Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman did with regards to allocating grazing lands became well known among all the people, among the Sahaba. And nobody objected at that time when he allocated it. So it becomes an ijma', it becomes a consensus. Consensus means that this is another source of evidence in Islam, like it is the Quran, Sunnah, and ijma', and the last one is the qiyas, right? So these are four sources of evidence, and this is one of the means of looking at it. When the adoption done by Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, or Khulafa Rashidin especially, and nobody made any kind of objection, then it comes under the category of consensus. As Ibn Qudama narrated that there was consensus on this matter. Ibn Qudama is a famous Hanbali scholar, by the way. Okay, types of public expenditure at the time of Uthman. So now we're talking about the expenditure. Okay. Inshallah, I'll try to go in 5 minutes. Then it was the salary of the Khalifa. Uthman was one of the richest people. He did not take any salary. Okay? He did not take any salary. He did not take any wealth from the Baytul Mal for his family. Even though they tried to make complaints about him, he is the one who used his own wealth. His business was quite spread out, and he was still very rich, and he was living off of it and spending from that wealth on his family and even the other family members as well. But the salary of the governors were from the Baytul Mal. Governor is the wali. Besides that, public expenditure on the Hajj from the Baytul Mal. Okay? On the Hajj, when the people are coming from Umrah, the state used to make sure that they be taken care of. Now today, we know that this is one of the biggest businesses. I was trying to Google around what is the estimated number. So it was about, somewhere the numbers were $12 to $20 billion revenue they generated or made by just through the Hajj. Right? This is called non-oil-based income. Okay? Look how they were spending from the Baytul Mal for the people who are coming to Hajj. Now, just to apply, you have to pay nowadays. One of my friends, he was trying to do last year, and he paid, it was asking for 13,000, now it has become about 17 or 18,000 per person. And when he was trying 13,000, they rejected him, and after rejection, he still have to pay about $2,000. So you can see that how the wealth has been usurped from the people in a classic manner. Okay, and the wealth was also used for financing the expansion of the Masjid al-Haram and Masjid al-Nabawi, both of them. Okay? Again, number of people who are coming in for Hajj, number of people who are coming in for Salat al-Jum'ah or Eid, Salat al-Jum'ah, Eid, they don't open it also. But when they were coming in, the space was not enough, so Uthman bin Affan, he actually demolished Masjid al-Nabawi. That was done in time of Umar, but it grew. The population grew more than that, hence he had to demolish it and reconstruct Masjid al-Nabawi. Basis of the hadith of Rasulullah that man bana masjid al-Allahi, bana Allahu lahu mithlahu fil jannah. The one who builds a masjid in this dunya, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will build a house in a similar house in the Jannah. Okay. Same thing happened with the Masjid al-Haram. It was expanded in the time of Uthman as well. And Uthman's time, the first navy was built in the time of Uthman as well. So for the building the navy, talking about the ships were built at that time for navy, and hence the money came from the treasury again. I think the wealth also for the Muslims helped. In the time of Uthman, he is the first person who started giving the salary to the Muazzin. Muazzin, the one who calls for the prayers. I don't know, and as far as his relatives' stipends go and his stipends go, he was not taking it, and it was not from the wealth or the treasury, rather it was coming from Uthman's wealth himself. I talked about this, he was accused of it, and that's incorrect. This is the last thing, inshallah, and we'll stop here. Abdullah bin Sa'ad bin Abi Sarah, he was kind of an adopted brother of Uthman bin Affan, and he was, when he was marching towards the upper Egypt area, Uthman made the deal with him, because he was the Rotary army. He said, if you open that land, you conquer the land, he will give him 1/5 of the 1/5. What does it mean by 1/5? Because the khums, which is the 1/5, is supposed to go to the state, and he spoils the war that comes in. He said, out of that 1/5, 1/5 will go to Abdullah bin Sa'ad bin Abi. So he was successful, and he gave him that wealth, and Abdullah sent the rest of the 4/5 of the 5th back to Uthman bin Affan. Now some people, they complained to Uthman about Abdullah had taken that, and Uthman went back to Abdullah and asked him, and he even returned him that wealth. Even though Uthman's action was not against Sharia, Rasulullah himself have done things like that, and he allowed that, hence it was allowed action done by Uthman bin Affan. And Uthman was, as you will see in general, he was very forbearing person, and very humble person, and he took that wealth and returned back. Abdullah agreed with him. So, inshallah, next week we'll talk about the judiciary in the time of Uthman bin Affan, how the judiciary was run, and I'll try to contrast it or compare it with current judiciary which are out there, how Islam provides the judiciary of justice to people. Okay, if there's any question about today's talk, what we can answer.